Okay, so this is the week 4 lecture for context and environment. If you're unable to get the Zoom live, this is the recorded lecture. It's on the home safety modifications, a little bit on tornado, the short story. Quote of the day: "Be the change you want to see in the world." That's a good one. These are the lecture questions for today. These are very important, all these questions. These all come right directly from the AJOT reading on home safety assessment. It's a really good article about why OTs are so good at home safety assessments, but really, it is really our thing, home safety assessments, because we look at the client so holistically. So I'm putting a lot of importance on that article. So what I mean by that is really, really know that article well for the midterm exam. Know all these categories really, really well. All 10 of these categories for the midterm exam. There's probably going to be an essay question related to that. So it's like fair warning. Memorize that article, memorize these 10 categories. Really need to know it. It really has a lot of key stuff around home safety evaluations. And this is something that's going to be the cornerstone of a lot of what you do in rehab, even if you're not in home health, because you're always thinking, what's your bathroom like? What's your bedroom like? And you're trying to gear your rehab and all that towards their needs when they go home. And in home health, you're in their home trying to meet their needs for that. So it's a really key skill for OTs to know for any kind of rehab, really. So you're going to get a lot of that. You're going to be an expert at that. Nothing else, you'd be an expert at home safety evaluations by the time you finish this course and this semester, because you're doing a joint activity interprofessional with a physical therapist as well. So this is going to give you a leg up on that so you can be experts before you start working with the PT students and kind of know what you're doing. And this also sets you up for your assignment, which is due a week from Tuesday, 2/22, on the home safety evaluation of your own home or apartment. And we'll get into that in the lab Thursday. It's a pretty involved assignment. Give yourself some time. It's going to take some time to do it. So be prepared. It's a pretty in-depth assignment, heavily graded, closely graded as well. Okay, so let's do an overview of home assessments, kind of what it's like for those of you who haven't seen one done before. It's very different from the hospital setting. In the hospital setting, patients are very anxious to do what you tell them to do because they want to get out of there. They want to go home. And you're very much in control in the hospital environment. And then when you go into the home environment, in a lot of cases, the degree of control or whatever kind of flips around. You're a guest in their home. So, if you can't kind of make that relationship and make it pretty clear to them that you have something to offer them, they're going to say, please don't come back. You're no longer a guest in my home. You have to really kind of sell yourself and really much fit into their world versus kind of the other way around. Older adults generally do better with a prioritized small list of recommendations. I think we've talked about this a little bit, but you're going to have all these ideas, which you should have, and it's great to have all these ideas to make their home environment safer, but you're just going to snow them under, you're going to overwhelm them, they're just not going to get it, it's just not going to happen. So focus down to one or two things, maybe just one thing for the week, see how that goes, try something else, and kind of slowly build your relationship and build the recommendations. Motivational interviewing, if you're not familiar with that, you're kind of letting them feel like they're in control, so it's kind of their idea. For example, a lot of times I go into a home, I would say, geez, that throw rug right there, it's a pretty looking rug, but I just had a client last week, he had a rug just like that, and he tripped over it, fractured his hip. It was just awful. Had to go to the hospital. He's still in rehab. It's what happened to him, and I'm saying it's going to happen to you. It's something to think about it, that rug. And you're going to leave it up to them. In a lot of cases, by putting it that way, they may say, well, not sure about the rug. You say, well, I can roll it up for you, or we can do something different with the rug. Kind of letting them feel like they're in control works a lot more effectively in the home environment. Not to say this works for everybody. Some patients really love therapist that comes in and kind of dictates and tells them what to do. But a lot of patients don't. Again, you're a guest into their home. Just when you start moving things around in their home, changing things, adding bars and benches and commodes, they can be very reluctant to do it. The aesthetics, all that stuff that we talked about earlier, making it look too medical. These are the things you need to kind of determine before you even get into the idea of making recommendations around grab bars and whatever. What is their readiness for change level? Remember that back in wellness, all those good memories from wellness. Pre-contemplation, not considering it, they're not going to do it. Contemplation, they're thinking about it. Preparation, they're making a plan to change. This is when you're going to jump in and help them with that. Action, they've made the change. And maintenance, they're trying to keep up with the changes. What is the level of compliance? This is a huge thing. We make the change, maybe a degree of compliance with the change. Are they likely to follow through with your recommendations and strategies? This is where it's really important to get the whole family to get involved. Usually have a lot more success with the daughters and sons, or even the grandchildren, versus the actual patient, because they're not that motivated, but their daughter is, to keep them safe, to keep them out of the hospital. Clients don't like to really follow through with recommendations. Poor insight can be a real difficult thing if they have poor readiness for change level. Doesn't mean you can't do the change, but in that case, you really want to look to other family members to kind of reinforce your ideas. Determine the client's personal assistance preferences. Is the client amenable to personal assistance to complete the task? First, to be independent or no personal assistance. A lot of patients are very, very independent. When we talk about personal assistance, usually it's very, very personal, as in bathing and dressing, toileting, those sorts of things. It can be challenging to get the person to accept that. Determine the client's level of social support. How much support do they have? We just could have talked about that. Family, maybe not family, maybe friends and neighbors can help out. In a lot of cases, that is the case. How much are they willing to help? Community organizations. A lot of times, there's community organizations willing to help. Do they live with able-bodied others? In a lot of cases, they're living with somebody that's also disabled. I can't tell how many older couples I saw. I wasn't sure which one I was treating. My patient or her spouse. It can be very, very challenging. Determine the client's ability to maintain home modifications. Do they have adequate personal resources to maintain solutions? Financial, cognitive, functional, cognitive. Do not have personal resources to maintain solutions. Financial, functional. So again, how much resources do they have? How much money do they have to pay for this stuff? How functional are they? Home maintenance is a huge concern with older folks, especially if their children, if they have any children, are not close by. There was a survey of older folks in the Bangor area, Eastern Area Agency on Aging did, and the number one concern for older folks was home maintenance. Paying for someone to do it, getting someone to do it. It's even hard if you have the money to get somebody to come in and fix your toilet, fix your roof, that sort of thing. So, especially around home modifications, so it can be a big deal. Financial resources, we kind of talked about that. Do they have a limited income? What is the insurance paying for or not paying for? There are a lot of different kinds of resources out there in this area. In most areas, there's the Agency on Aging. They're kind of a statewide, I think probably a national-wide kind of thing. Each state has their own version of it. Different diagnoses of supportive organizations. Multiple Sclerosis Society, they're a great one. I get a lot of stuff through them. Parkinson's has one, other kind of ones. Here's another really big one you need to consider. What is the client's clinical course of disease? Is it acute, as in it's going to get better pretty quickly, relatively quickly, or is it chronic? In a lot of cases, it is chronic, and even so much chronic that they're going to deteriorate. I can talk to some students about this, but you have to kind of think about that. Say it is Parkinson's disease, or something like ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, and you just know they're just going to get worse and worse and worse. They're at a certain point when you see them, getting them, safe and everything they need for that point. But you also have to educate the family and the client down the road. you may need a hospital bed. This is how you would get a hospital bed. Down the road, you may need a shower bench, that sort of thing. So kind of think short-term and long-term. Sometimes it's a very chronic thing, but it's kind of static. So it's going to be the way it is for a long period. A great example of that is a spinal cord injury. It's not going to get any better, and it's probably not going to get any worse, at least not for a long time. So this is what they're at. They're C6, can't use the legs, little use of their arms. You can set it up for you where you're at this level, because this is where you're going to be for the next 20, 30 years. Aesthetics, we've talked a lot about that. A lot of times people reject things that are medical looking. You have to kind of be creative around this. I can't tell you how many times I have patients that are falling, getting up to go to the bathroom at night, and you suggest, of course, well, let's get a commode. Let's stick it beside your bed. And they say, I don't want that commode in my bed. It looks too medically. People are going to come in and see that commode. It looks awful. Can you put a blanket over the commode? Can we do something else to make it look not so medical looking? Do they emphasize appearance more over function and safety? And it can be a concern. Again, I kind of get the daughter involved. She really needs this. You don't want her to fall and break her hip, kind of thing. What is the structural condition of the home? Is the home in disrepair? A lot of trailers that I've gone into are just kind of falling apart. Think about the walls, the integrity of the walls, especially when it comes to grab bars. When you're drilling in grab bars, you have to drill them into a stud. I used to have a stud finder, and I would, okay, here's the stud right here, and I'd mark a tape, put your grab bar here, here's a stud over here, grab bar there. Walls of trailers don't, generally speaking, have studs. So what are you going to do? The suction cup one, we know the suction cup ones are not so great, but you have to kind of weigh those kinds of things. Flooring conditions, I've seen floors with holes in it, that sort of stuff. Railings can be unsafe, steps, railing sort of things can be unsafe. What is the housing type? Do they own it, or is it a rental? And that's a big difference. A rental, you start asking or changing things too much, and they're going to be very reluctant because they don't own the home. In this case, what I usually do is go through the landlord. And in a lot of cases, this is a good thing that they rent, because the landlord is super conscientious not getting sued. Not going to suit if they fall and hurt themselves. So I just call, leave a message, as long as the client's okay with this. I'm the OT. I'm recommending some grab bars for the toilet so she doesn't fall. When she's going to the bathroom, I think she's a fall risk. I'm in there. The doctor ordered me to go in and see this patient because they're worried about their fall risk. Can you give me a call back? Can we kind of work this out? And usually they're like all over it, and they'll do it for you. What is the available space and layout of the client's home? Mobility within the floor plan. We're going to get into that when you get the wheelchair dimensions. Portability. This can be an issue. What does clients need for portability? For a lot of clients, they may move back and forth between different homes. They may be snowbirds. They may go to Florida for the winter. Can I take that commode with me? Yes, you can. Can I take this with me? Maybe you can't. Commodes can go from over the toilet, which works really well, to over the side of the bed. You could move it back and forth, kind of thing. What is the client's literacy level? Can they read? Are they fully literate? Can they understand? This gets into health literacy kind of issues. Vehicle access. This is one of the questions we talked about in the lab. Need to consider all the following when assessing home safety. Client's ability to get in and out of the vehicle. We talked about this again, but you go in backside first. This is an adapted van, probably very expensive, but the seat comes right out. It's like really cool. It comes out, she just sits and just cruises right in. If they have a problem turning in the car, sometimes people have a hard time turning, getting their legs into the car. Sometimes a swivel seat will work, or just a garbage bag under their backside here. They can help make it easy for them to swivel into the car. If they have problems getting in and out of the car. Transportable wooden platform, kind of on a rope if they have a hard time stepping up into it. Partially rolled down window. Hooking a hanger through the window can work as something to grab onto. They just need a little kind of guidance. Adapting seats, lowering, raising. Adapted grabbing devices, loops. Here's one right here. This is pretty cheap. You can get this, it hooks right onto the heart of the door there, and it gives them something solid to grab onto. Pretty cheap kind of things. You get those, Google those. There's a strap that may work. Adapted vehicles, I think you get that in other courses. Entering the house, the railings, sturdiness of the railings, width of the doorway. So enough width for them to get in with a wheelchair, with a walker. A lot of times managing the screen door, the outer door, can be a real problem. A lot of times I'm putting grab bars right by the door as they're going in. And doorknob, can they handle the doorknob? Mailbox access, is it a mailbox at the end of the driveway? Can you talk to the mail person, get them to deliver the mail right to the house? Lips, thresholds, lighting. Those LED or motion sensitive lights are really cool, the best option. Ramps, different kinds of ramps. Let's just look at these pictures for a second. Different style ramps. Here's a portable metal ramp. VA, Veterans Association, we've got a lot of these for VA clients. They use it if it's a acute, temporary situation while they need it, and they can just give it back. Here's just a regular ramp, and this is the switchback design. This is way too steep. Remember that ratio we talked about, 1 to 16, or a minimum of 1 to 12. So every inch up from the ground to the bottom of the door, you have to go out a foot. A foot for every inch up. You're going to be doing this for your apartment, a house again, just like you did before, I believe. Thinking about it for Justin or Justine coming into your house. This is obviously too steep. There's no way you could get a wheelchair up there. It's not really good at all. The switchback with the platform right here, this is a platform. This is a lot better slope. I don't know if it's 12 to 1, but it's a lot more manageable kind of slope. Think, can this person push the wheelchair up by themselves, or is their older spouse able to push them up the ramp by themselves? The width, ADA width, 36 inches. The rails, the railings, 28 inches high for children, 34 to 48 of a range for adults. These are the landings. The bottom turns, and then the top on a landing, maybe 30 feet. It should be at least 5 feet by 5 feet each landing. In the main, think about the surface. Think about going up that in an icy, cold day like now. You want some tar paper or something. Hallways, clutter. Clutter is huge. Consider railings along the hallway. Sometimes they want to use that to kind of walk around. Throw rugs especially. Contrast. Think about, also consider, a lot of folks have visual impairments and they know their house really, really well. They may be almost completely blind, but they know where everything is. So be very careful about starting to move things around on them. You may make it more unsafe and less functional for them, even if you think, oh, I got to move this here and that there. So kind of think about that as well. Bumps, ridges, transitions from rooms to room, and lighting. Chairs for rest breaks can work good. Sharp edges. Think sharp edges. You might want to mark them if there's a visual issue. This looks horrendous, but believe me, I saw a lot of this. A lot of hoarders. Older folks, it's quite common, I almost would say, to a degree, varying degrees of hoarding in homes. Older folks that are isolated. A lot of it's just the stuff that has so much meaning to them over the years from their children or whatever. They can't give it up. They're overwhelmed with their illness and debility. And there's just so much stuff. And it's hard to move stuff and get people to give up stuff, for sure. But clutter is something we have to look at. Up and down from chairs, couches, sinking cushions. A lot of times they have these cushions that they've been sitting in since 1910. And it's just disgusting and they can't get out of it, but they don't want to give it up. What can you do to it? Electrical lift chairs. You can put some on a wooden platform to raise it up or more support under the cushion. If they're eating in their chair, lap trays, dinner trays. The TV remote can be a big issue. There's big remotes, I think, for low vision. You may have to adapt that. You may have to work on teaching them how to use the remote. They get like a dish or something, and those remotes can be overwhelming. I spent entire visits, just teaching somebody with a slight cognitive issue how to use their remote. Sharp edges, glass. If they're falling all the time, got to think about padding it, almost making it childproofing. Telephone access. A lifeline, something around the neck or the wrist is the ideal. They don't want to pay for that. They aren't into that. At least a cell phone. Keep the cell phone in your pocket in case you fall. The bedroom. I don't know if the bed, maneuver in the bed. If it's too high, remove the box spring. You can lower it down. You can add bed rails. I think we talked about this to the existing bed. Side rails, trapeze. Just a side note, I don't know if I already said this, but you really need to know all this stuff from these slides. You really have to memorize it and know it all. On the exam, you'll be expected that you know all these different ideas for home safety. It's just a cornerstone of what, a basic fundamental of what OTs need to know. If you don't, I'm sure you know a lot of these, but the ones you don't know, make sure you have them as your repertoire in your brain. Side rails, wedges, rope. We talked about the rope down here to pull somebody up, sitting up. Skin issues is a big thing around a bed. Egg mattresses, air crates, air mattresses. Medicare pays for those if they're starting to have skin issues. Even the backs of their feet. They have little pads for feet. Can be skin breakdowns. The leg lifter. Talked about that. You can use a gait belt with that. A good sturdy belt. A towel. The bedroom. Night lights. This is like I talked about the commode beside the bed. Ideally, they'll go for it. Night lights, maybe motion lights. One of the highest, we'll talk about this in a second, in a few weeks, but one of the highest, I think maybe next week, one of the highest causes of falls is incontinence, trying to get to the bathroom. A lot of times it happens at night. When you get older, as you probably know, your eyes just don't adjust to dim lighting as well as when you're younger. When you're disoriented, it's just a recipe for bad news. Other things to think about the bedroom. Access to the closet and the bureau. Getting the clothes out can be really challenging. Maneuver things around for that. Phone access again. Stability when getting dressed by the side of the bed. And they have to stand up and hike their pants. Do they need a bar or something to hang on to? Urinal commode. Urinal can be very helpful beside the bed. The stairs. Obviously, this is a stair lift device. Very expensive. But the thing to get if somebody is having issues with stairs in their house. Checking out the rails, electric seat. Sometimes we put like walkers or wheelchair on top, so it's always there when they get up the steps. They can use it to get around on the bottom. Contrast on the edge of the steps. You're tripping over the steps as they go up. Animals. People love their animals, love their pets. As you will see or did see with the story with Justine this week. Can be a big deal, and just suggesting, well, that animal is unsafe. Are you suggesting I get rid of my pet? They're not going to like that. What can you do to make it easier with cats and dogs? Bringing things up so the client isn't bending over to do the kitty litter thing, to change the food in the water dish. Getting the animal in and out, especially dog. They have to go out to pee and all that. That transition, the leash, the door can be bad news. I've seen a lot of falls happen around that. I have to go over that thoroughly with the client and come up with a solution that works. Bathroom. OTs, bizarrely enough, spend a lot of time in the bathroom. It's kind of like one of our places that we love to work, bathrooms. So this is a beautiful shower. This guy is rich. He struck it rich on the stock market. No, I'm just making that up. It's just very expensive, but if you can get that, this is cool. The ideal. They even have wheelchairs that go into the shower, so you could just wheel in and wheel out. Or you could just wheel them in the chair and they could transfer onto the bench. All these great rails along the shower hose. Super ideal. This is a commode of the toilet. They have these commodes with a bucket, the hole in the bottom. I love these. It looks very medically, that's for sure. But I love these in terms of safety. It's really, really solid. You can adjust the height, and you can just move it beside the bed at night and over the toilet during the day. This is another option. This is called a VersaFrame. It's just a bar. It doesn't raise the toilet, but it gives them a bar to get them up from. Raised toilet seats. You've seen those, that plastic wedge. We have one of those in the lab. Something to grab onto, a bar or some kind of bureau or solid structure they can lift up from, push up from. access in and out of the bathroom. We talked about that, but a lot of times the walker does not fit in there. So if it doesn't, cane, grab bar or something. Floor mats here on some kind of resistive mat on the shower bottom. We'll talk more about the bathroom in a bit. Stability when standing to manage the flow, especially with the toilet thing. They can grab here if they have this, or maybe a grab bar. Stability when performing toilet hygiene, if they have to, kind of shift their weight to one cheek to do it. Consider all these things. Grab bars. Usually the way I do it with grab bars, this is a good setup in general. One here and one there. When in doubt, I would kind of do this. But ideally, when I'm doing it, I do a dry run, have the person in here. Everybody's height is different. Their preference is different. So we simulate what they have to do, and we kind of see where they're going to be reaching, where they want to reach for support. Wherever it is, I just mark it with some painter's tape and say, put your grab bar right here, as long as I can find a stud. So they have to stand up to kind of get their backside to wash, stepping in and out. The long-handled hose, which is what this is right here, those are good. The ideally, if it has controls on the hose itself, so they don't have to work the faucet. So you can just leave the hose on the ground right there, and they can just pick it up and do what they need to do to wash up. You don't have to kind of reach way up here or reach way out here. Skid mat. Contrast, we talked about this. It's very white and light. Black tape can help. Grab bars. Drilled into the studs. Ideally, that's more safer than these suction cup things. You see where the person reaches. I talked about that. Suction cups. You'll find a lot of walls where you can't put a stud in, or a lot of times there's a new thing where it kind of bubbles out. So there's like a wall here, and then the actual wall is behind it. It's like 2 layers. So to get to the stud, you need these long drills. Very tricky. You almost have to have a carpenter do it. So it can't be done. But it's creating a challenge for putting in grab bars. Trailers are a challenge, and then these bubble dual wall bathrooms are a challenge because there's nothing behind the wall. There's no stud. There's like that gap. So you're thinking maybe suction cups. Be very, very careful with these. I'm not saying don't use these, but I would definitely not use them if the patient wasn't really with it. If they're cognitively intact and very aware, a lot of them have like little lights or an indicator that tells them when they're safe or not. First thing I do if I see one of these is I'm pulling on it hard. And if it pops off, it's like, this is not secure, I wouldn't recommend it. But if they have that on there good and they're checking it regularly and there's really no other option, it's something to think about. Just going back here, you can't really see it. But if you think of a shower and a tub, which is what you're usually dealing with, like in the lab, the shower and a tub, the edge of the tub, if they're stepping out, there's railings, grab bars, like a horseshoe-shaped grab bar. Don't know if we have one in the lab, that you can clamp right to the side of the tub. And that's really good to have. Okay, moving to the kitchen. Just think of this guy, let's say it's a spinal cord injury, so it's a permanent fixture kind of thing. So you could really go to town and readapting his whole kitchen versus it was a temporary thing with somebody with a total hip replacement. That's why the course of the disease is really, really important. And there's a lot to think about with wheelchair access to the kitchen. We'll get into that when we're measuring our wheelchair measurements to fit a house in the lab. But access to all the dishes and cups, consider bringing everything, little typo there, consider bringing everything, can't get at it, bringing everything down to shoulder height, access to silverware, visual perceptual issues can be around that, access to refrigerator, moving things around to the front, that sort of stuff. All these issues you need to think of. Here's a space, can he put his legs and wheel up into here so he can reach further. The kitchen, the stove is huge. They have these high-tech stoves now where they can be voice activated, or they could have automatic timers that the whole thing turns off by itself. Because a lot of older clients, especially if they're dementia, they forget to turn the stove off, and of course that's a fire hazard. Tactile large print contrast to use controls. If they can't see it, can they feel it? A little piece of Velcro, can line it up with the numbers, might work. Access to back burners can be dangerous, especially if they're wearing like a nightgown. You can use a reacher or some kind of device to get the access. Moving things in and out of the stove, because you visualize you have to reach way in, in the grill to put like a pot roast in. You can get some kind of reaching device that can pull the roast in and out, so again, you don't have to reach way in a hot oven. Pots and pans, handles, grips. Sometimes I'm putting handles and grips on the pots and pans for them. Faucets, access to the faucet, strength, sensory awareness, all those issues. Washcloth, can they even use the washcloth? Wiping counters, that sort of thing. Dish detergent, access, getting where they can get it. You kind of have to simulate, the activity and see these things as they kind of pop up. Thermostat seems like a simple thing, but it can be a huge deal. Adjusting the thermostat. If they can't see the thermostat. Tactile cues. I'm using some kind of tactile cue. Again, probably a little slither of Velcro or something that's very bumpy. Laundry is a huge issue. They're still doing laundry. Access to the laundry room. Carting, carrying the wash to the laundry room and back. Height of the dishwasher. Weight of the detergent. You have to put into smaller containers. Transporting, like I said. Folding, putting it away, hanging it in the closet. All these things, there's potential fall risk. You can help out with these. The walker itself, we could have talked about this. I think you're familiar with this. If it's one of these old-fashioned walkers, and some people use these old-fashioned walkers in their home still, a walker tray, a walker basket. These rollators are cool in terms of function. This one has the oxygen tank right on it. A lot of them have a basket, so they can carry food and different items, and they can just sit on it. Those are the good sides to it. The bad side to it is these brakes. They just never seem to lock, so they're kind of moving around. They get in the habit of walking with the walker, sitting, which is not good. So they have pluses and minuses, but they can make the client more functional, that they're safe with it. And that's what we want as an OT. So a lot of times, if you're advocating to the PT, I think she needs a rollator because she needs to sit and rest. She needs to carry her stuff into the kitchen, whatever. Room access, moving doors, putting up a curtain, we talked about that, reversing hinges, moving wheels to the inside, we talked about that. A traditional wheeled walker, if the wheels on the out here, you can flip them around to gain like 4 inches to get into a tight bathroom. Oxygen line is a huge deal. There are different options for an oxygen line, retractable oxygen lines. Lightweight portable tanks, home modifications, wheelchair access. We'll get into this in the lab. You need to have these measurements to see, can they turn around in their wheelchair in the room? Can they get at the dishes and all that? Environmental control units. All these smart home technology. Smart home technology. Go to the Home Depot. Go to the smart home section. All kinds of cool stuff that you're, I'm sure, really well aware of that you can do through a voice activated cell phone or whatever, controlling the heat, the temperature, locking windows, everything you can imagine, really. And they also have like monitors. It's privacy issues, but if the family wants to see, are they falling, what's going on in their home with cameras and audio and all that sort of stuff. Okay, so this is I think if you're just listening to this, you don't need to worry about this. This week's lab, Home Safety Eval 222. Ask if you have questions.